Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. We're still doing our pandemic projects. Unfortunately, the pandemic continues, so I'm going to continue doing these. As much as it's getting a little crazy to do one a day or so, we're going to continue at that. So today I've chosen the Okuma Stratus. In this case, it's the CS25. I think this reel is probably up to the 5th or 6th version by now. This one's a little bit older. This is an 8 or a 9 ball bearing reel, 9 ball bearings. It's a 30 size, I think, 20 or 30, 25 right in the middle. And it's a nice smooth reel. And the good part about these is that they're relatively inexpensive. I think you can probably find these at a major sporting goods house as a standalone reel for around $30 or so. So it's a well-built reel, nice and smooth. This one I've noticed, I've talked about it from time to time, and it may be a little bit difficult to see, but the line is bunching on the bottom here versus up top, or as smooth. So it's almost a cone, and that we'll show you what causes that and how to correct that as we go through this. So we're going to take this apart. I'm going to clean it up. It's got some dirt and junk on it. I got this one as part of a Facebook marketplace purchase of about 10 rods and reels. I think I probably showed it at one point as a preview, and I figured it was about time to get to this. So I'm going to start by removing the external pieces and parts. You'll notice I have a protective glove on my left hand. Just a habit. I like to keep the grease and dirt and grime off of it, and recommend that you do so as well. You'll also notice that I use the bottom of a milk jug as a parts tray, and that helps me to know where the pieces and parts are when I go to reinstall. So I mentioned earlier that that we would talk a little bit about that bunching. There's a series of shim washers on these reels. They come preset from the factory, and here's 2 of them right here. I'm trying to get them off. Not doing. Geez, there you go. So there's 2 of these here, and that's probably a standard. When it bunches to the bottom, what it means is that the spool is going up too high and it's gathering more on the bottom, and that the stroke below is not getting down there where the line can ride. So we have 2. I'm going to make an adjustment when we go to reinstall, just putting 1 back in. That will lower the height of the spool on here. That'll have more line gathered to the top of the spool, and it should even it out. So if you have that bunching problem, that's the cause of it. Just go back and either add 1 or take 1 away. If the spool was bunching up here, it would say it's not getting low enough, and then in that case you would add 1 or 2 to raise the spool up a little bit to do that. Okay, we've taken that off. We're going to take the handle off. First thing you want to do when you're looking to take a handle off, spin the reel. If the cap on this side is moving, it means that you have a handle that goes through the main gear, and it's a screw cap. There'll be a screw on the other side of this. You want to remove the screw cap there, and then we'll be able to take this apart. Now I didn't do my homework here. I'm kind of flying blind. I didn't go look for a schematic. I'm going to trust my instincts on this one. But if you haven't done one of these before, then it's always a good idea to get the schematic, and that'll tell you a little bit about what to expect underneath the reel, and also it'll give you an idea of what pieces and parts make it up in case something's broken and you need to reorder. There's a set screw to the rotor. We have to take the rotor off to get the side plate off, because you'll notice here that there's no break in the case here, that the case actually extends up under the rotor, and the only way to do that the right way is to get this rotor off. So we've taken that set screw out. Now we're going to try and get the regular screw out of this. Nope, I guess I have the wrong length. Out of 10, it's probably a 9. This is an 8, that's not enough. So bear with me as we go find that the right wrench here. Okay, so this is another good example. So I started turning it as I would normally, to the left in a counterclockwise motion, and it didn't move, so I tried to the right, and sure enough, this is a reverse threaded nut. So you need to check as you're doing this, if you're going this way for your normal release and you find out it's not going anywhere, it seems to be getting tighter, just back it the other way. That's because the spool spins this way, so if you have the nut going in that direction, it's going to be tightening it as opposed to possibly coming loose, even though they use the tie-down screw. Alright, well, we should be able to take this off. We can see a nice design under here. We have a collar, a ball bearing. There's an anti-reverse bearing underneath this for the instant anti-reverse. And here's our structure for the side plate. Now you had to take that off for the side plate because there's a side plate screw up here. So even if you pulled all of these screws, you still wouldn't have been able to get the side plate off because that one is nested there. Alright, we're going to start by taking the bump guard off. Interestingly enough, this bump guard has got a screw that's held on through the hole here. You need a little micro screwdriver to get down in there. I'll tell you what, I've had my share of micro screwdriver screws over these pandemic projects. And this one's like almost like a Shimano kind of a design. Shimano hides a little screw in there just like that as well. Okay, we should be able to pull that off now. It may still be attached. All right. But I didn't make this one easy on us. Okay, so what's going to happen here, I just noticed this. There's a little tab here. It's probably held on by this screw. And that's a good reason why not to force anything as you're doing this type of work. Because if you do force it, you're going to crack something. I'm just going to remove the screws here. I'm going to lay these on my table. I'm not going to forget about the one that's up here in the handle, but I'm going to lay this on my table because I want to make sure that the side plate screws are all the same size. And I know one of them isn't because we just pointed that one out before. There's this little one up here, another micro screwdriver one. Those are my 4 side plate screws, and now let's see what happens now. We should be able to get this off now. There you go. So that's what was happening here. We were fighting this little pick here, and that sits in the slot here, sort of like this. And we were unable to pull that out, probably because the crosswind block just was in the way there. But just be careful of that. We know when we go to reinstall, we're going to put this back on before we do it. Also, you can see that there was a screw that was holding the bump guard in below. So just don't go wrenching things away. If you think that it's just obvious that there's just one screw there, well, chances are it could be more than that. Also in this one, this has an old-time little lever spring here. Watch that doesn't fly. If it did fly on you, that's how it goes in. It's a long clip with the bend side out, and that holds the tension on this anti-reverse. So okay, I think we pointed out enough with that. This looks to be a plastic case. I'm going to grab the 4 case screws. I'm going to put them right in that case there. Put 3 of them in the case. I'm just going to leave that right there because once we turn this up, we're just going to go right back in and do it again. Ball bearing, nice to see. It says 9 ball bearings. We were able to walk all of this out. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you have to take this crosswind block off. We'll go ahead and do that now. So the reel's dirty, but it doesn't look like it's ever been serviced, and it's relatively clean, so it's exterior dirt. I'm going to guess that this was probably used as a freshwater reel. Just kind of makes sense. We took the screw out of the axle, and that allows us to get the crosswind block out. Here's the crosswind block. It looks like we have a bearing in the crosswind block, and this is elliptical. So that's a smooth gear kind of thing. Now if you happen to have taken this apart, notice that there's a red dot here. There's a red dot here, and it's probably hard to see, but there is a red dot on the crosswind block gear back here. Those two need to align when you go to reinstall, otherwise the crosswind, well, the whole reel won't work, it'll jam up. Okay, a couple of bearings, I'm going to give them a soak. I'm using Reel X fishing reel oil. I've said on more than one occasion that we don't care what kind of oil you use. It doesn't have to be the manufacturer's oil, but we do care that you have the fishing reel oil as what you're using there. All right, we have up here, we have the pinion gear. It's clean. Again, if you wanted to take all of this off, you can. I'm going to oil that bearing up here while we're talking about it. You don't have to in a reel it's this clean. All I'm simply going to do here is I'm going to use some fishing reel grease. In this case, it's Penn Precision Reel Grease. And a brush. I'm going to make sure that we have a good amount of grease going onto that pinion gear. I'll also point out, if this happens to be your reel and it's in pieces and parts, that you have a spring that attaches. This is for the anti-reverse override. There's a little point or a hole in that override here, and the other part of the spring nestles onto the post there. If that's shot out and you're trying to figure out where it goes, that's where it goes. I know a lot of folks tune into the channel because they've got a reel open on their desk and they haven't quite figured out how to put it back. Okay, I've just moved that red dot up top. Just going to clean out the back of this crosswind block. There's a little bit of debris and old grease in there. Let's get that out and put new in. We can go load this up. This works by sliding it under. So I also tell folks, take pictures along the way. If you become unsure of how your reel was set up, you can always go back to the pictures and refer. In this case, I just remembered how it was set up because we had this little tag here that was interfering with the top of the reel here. Okay, this isn't going to work here in terms of being able to reset it, so I'm just going to move this crosswind gear down so that we can reinstall the axle. I'm doing that just by taking the screwdriver. Oh, I didn't get it set anyway. There we go. Alright, so I've just pushed it down. There's a channel that little stud rides in. And now we're going to move the red dot so that I can merge. I'm going to take that small bearing, which belongs in the back case, put that in. Probably need a screwdriver to push it down evenly. There we go, I just heard it seat properly. Now we're going to look for the red dot here, and again that red dot has to line up with the red dot there, and I'm not sure if it's something you can see or not, but that's the way it's going to go in. Before it goes in, we're going to brush a little grease. And you'll see that this is an off-centered crosswind gear. I'm going to check the teeth as well on this. So we're giving some grease. Make sure all the teeth are in good condition. And then we can go ahead, take that red dot, line it up with the red dot from the crosswind block. You can kind of get a visual on it. And that's the way it goes. So you won't see it at the moment because of what we just did there, but the red block goes in there, and then we have the two shims on this side. Folks have asked me, is it one shim, is it two shims, what is it? Well, the shims are set to align the gear and to take up slack in the case design. So In this case, from the factory, it came with 2. I noticed that when we were taking it out, and that's how we're going to put it back. All right, we can put the case back on, but before we do, we noted that we had to take it out this way. We've got the one that comes up. We have the one that sits in that slot. And then on this side, we have the tab that comes up. That's why it was kind of funky trying to get this thing out, but it's back in that way. Now you can put your case back on. Just like that. And since we know there's a hole down here, oops, we didn't put the axle shaft in. How do you like that? Stuck on my table there and caught my attention. That wouldn't have worked very well. Let's put the axle shaft back in. Alrighty, we got a little flat screw that's going to tie that down. I got so focused on how that little bump guard came that I forgot all about the axle shaft. There you go. Proving once again that we're human. Alright. Set that up. Set this up. Snap the case in. Snap the guard in. Now we know that there's a hole here to hold that bump guard, so that's the first thing we want to do, get that one held. And we still have that little screw sitting underneath here, so let's get that done. I'll tighten up the back end. Then we have the little screw that goes up top. Let's not forget that one. I'm holding my finger here. I don't want that other little spring, that's the override spring, to shoot out. That's why my thumb is up top like that. And we'll put the other 2 in. These can actually be driven in with the driver. Okay, we're good now. Alright, before I put the rest of it on, then I'm going to take a cloth. I'm going to take a cleaner. In this case it's Purple Power. And I'm just going to clean that case off since we have access to it at the moment. That's a concentrated degreaser. I'm told it has lye in there, so another reason why to wear a glove when you're working on these things. And I find that it has it's a very powerful one, just cleans the reel right up. So we'll do the same on this. I don't know, this one doesn't appear to have been fished salt water. It wouldn't make sense. I guess inland, inshore it could be. But for the most part, this appears to be sized as a freshwater fishing reel. It seems nice. It operates well for the $29 or $30 or whatever that list price is. I'm going to guess one of the bearings is a line roller bearing, so I'll put some there. I also like to just put a little shot of penetrating oil into the 2 seams where the bail rides, just to flush out any dirt that might be in there. This one seems to be riding just fine. Alright, we're going to grab the rotor to reassemble then, and match it up. We're going to remember when we took it off in a clockwise direction, so we want to put it on by spinning that backwards. And to the extent that you can, this one is a little bit difficult because that darn axle shaft comes through it. But to the extent that you can do it by hand, do it by hand. That way you won't cross strip or over torque anything. There we go, now we're done. Grab the handle. We got a little bit of junk on the handle, so let's get that cleaned while we're at it. So this reel looks lightly used. I mean, it looks like it's dirty, but it doesn't look like it's been beat up or abused in any regard. And a little bit of note. So Okuma, I think Okuma dates to the mid-1980s. It's a firm that's in China. And I seem to remember for some reason, although I'm going to just tell you it's my memory, I'm not sure if it's actual fact, I seem to remember that the early Okumas that came out said something like designed and engineered in Germany and manufactured in Taiwan. Now, for sure, the Okuma headquarters is based in Taiwan. There's a U.S. headquarters, I think that's out in California, but the international, or the Okuma Corporation, is actually in Taiwan. Okay, just cleaning out a little bit of the dust and dirt there. We're going to just take the drag stack out, check it, make sure that it's okay. No sense doing a partial service on these when it only takes you a few minutes to get the rest of it. The drag stack is held together with a drag stack spring. And then I'm just going to fish these out. So we have felt washers here. And felt washers, there's nothing wrong with them. They're used throughout the ranges of fishing reels. Shimano on their high ends use felt washers. If you find that you're fighting very big fish and you're tearing them up, well, then you want to replace them with carbon tex, but you don't have to. So felt washers need to be kept flexible, and to do that you use fishing reel oil. And I'm just putting these back the way they came out, but it's a typical stack. It's a washer, a round keyed washer, fabric washer, then the eared washer with the hole in it that floats, and then the last of the washers and another key. So as I put these in, I'm just going to give them another couple of dots of oil just to keep that fresh. This doesn't look like in any way that this reel's been fighting big fish that have torn up drags. The drags are in good condition, so just put them right back in. Last of the washers, and we'll come back into my parts tray, which always makes it convenient to know where your parts are. And we're going to reinstall that spring by just sitting one side into the groove, and then the other side, and then making sure that it's throughout. That spring doesn't do anything but hold those washers from falling out. And then we're going to grab the spool. Not going to grab the spool, I'm going to grab the click rotor. That click rotor is what's going to make the noise from this little click tongue down here. When the spool spins backwards, it's going to let you know that your line's going out, your drag is working. So we had two of these when we took them off. I'm only putting one back in because of that bunching problem. The other one you just put to the side if it ever happens that it starts bunching in the opposite direction. You can always put the second one back in. Put the spool on. That click you hear, that's that click tongue against the click ratchet. Got one more piece of dirty dishes to do. Just clean up the top of the spool. And as I'm looking in my parts tray, there's an example of why the parts tray is valuable. I'm looking and I noticed that I haven't put the hold down screw back in for the nut for the rotor. So let's go do that now. There we go. Now we can put the spool back on. Now I'm going to have to take that braid off, otherwise you're not going to remedy this bunching below here. You're going to take it all the way down to the bottom, otherwise the bunching will continue. So that'll be another project for another day. You don't need to watch me do that at this point. Okay, I'm just going to finish that off. So we have a cleaned up Okuma Stratus CS25, nice reel, a $30 reel. It's a good lake reel, good river reel, and good pier reel. It's not your ultralights, but it's at a nice size there. We could do some inshore fishing in the lake. So folks have asked me, do I repair reels in addition to these videos? The answer is yes. If you have a reel that you want to have repaired, if you don't feel like taking on the project yourself, my contact information is available on my business card. I hope that you are taking it on as yourself. That's why I started this, to show folks how to do it. And if you've got one of these and you want to tune it up, now you know, and you learn something special about how to reset that elliptical gear. And that's on more than just the Stratus here. This is on a lot of the Okuma reels. So you typically will find some kind of reference marks where you have to have them lined up, or this will not operate properly. So if you were stuck on that, and I hope that little lesson learned there helps you unstick. We also talked about removing a shim here with the bunching, and we showed you how to clean it up as well. So I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, please like it, and if you have any questions, or comments, please leave them. I will try to respond to all, regardless of whether it's a question on this reel or a different reel. And of course, we're in the middle of this pandemic, so I wouldn't be right for me to leave you without wishing you good health. Please stay safe, stay well, stay informed. Please follow what the authorities are telling us to do in terms of isolation and the like until we get this thing to the point where we can go back fishing. So with that, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Appreciate you watching. Please stay tuned for more.